she wanted to be picked up, that was enough of a cue for me to go ahead and follow through. So it doesn't have to be, a button press. We're still honoring their body language, their communication with vocalizations, scratching at the door, whatever it is. Particularly our older learners, they may already have a lot of well-established modes of communication. We are still honoring that, and we're using buttons to enhance all of that as well. And I do apologize if I looked blurry at all there. I am on rural internet here in Central Virginia. Hopefully we'll have a better connection soon, working on it. But yeah, I apologize. That's not you guys, that's me. And as your intros are coming through, I love it. I'll read through them in just a moment. A little bit of housekeeping before we dive in too much further. So we have our wonderful community coordinator, Calvin, here. Truly one of the most important parts of the FluentPet community, in my opinion. He'll be keeping an eye out for any technical issues you might have. So please don't hesitate. If you need help, just reach out, let us know. This is being recorded today, and Chrome and Safari do tend to work best. So if you're having trouble seeing the screen, hearing the audio, that can sometimes be helpful, with the exception, again, of if it's just me that's looking a little bit blurry. Probably my internet connection and not an issue on your end. So I do apologize. Yeah, hopefully I'll have that resolved sooner rather than later. Doesn't help us today, but all right. And on the agenda today are our introductions, which we're about to dive into here. Then we'll chat through the keys to button teaching, modeling, first words, and target training. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. In the chat, in writing, is a little bit easier for me to process your question fully, to answer it at the most relevant point, and yeah, again, to help me tailor this to what you all need. And then I'll share additional resources, because this won't be your only opportunity to get help. And then we'll have more time for Q&A if there's any lingering questions. Though if a lot come through all throughout, there might be a little bit less time for Q&A at the end. So we'll see. This, again, won't be your only opportunity. All right, so intros. Let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Morgan Krug. I'm a certified dog behavior consultant. I've been working professionally with animals for 18 years now. And while I'm best known for teaching my blind cat Jasper to use the buttons, who's pictured here, I've had success with multiple visually impaired cats. I've got my one-eyed boy and my partially blind little void cat, Katie, who was requesting earlier. And then I also have my Border Collie, Adora, who's been at it for 4.5 years, and a little senior mini American Shepherd who is napping, and we'll use them on occasion. It's not his primary mode of communication, and that's all right. All right, let's see. Kristen, welcome to you. Frida and Fletcher, the cats are already repping, and seniors as well, age 15, love it. And Calvin, always great to have you. And Jason, they've been crushing it as a team. Ruth, welcome from Italy to you and your Wisla Murphy. Love a Wisla. a ball button, great. Okay, I've been struggling to add others since they all mean ball. I understand well. We started with ball with my Border Collie Adora, and ball is life for her. So we'll definitely talk about how to add buttons and find the right sweet spot of motivation, but not over the top exciting, depending, because we want them to still be able to think and learn. This takes a lot of processing to activate the buttons, to plan out ahead, to know where they're going, to discriminate between buttons. So the more excited they are, we want them to be, eager to use the buttons, right? But they can be over the top. And then it's tough for them to be accurate and for us to understand them. So we can talk about that sweet spot more. Totally get it. You're not alone in that. And Becky, welcome to you. And Molly, 6-month-old Cavapoo. Dimitri, welcome. And Barbara, welcome to you. And Max, very orange cat, just ordered first buttons and excited to learn. Awesome. Reyes fam, awesome. Welcome to you as well. 4.5-month-old mixed breed pup, been with you 2 weeks, took almost instantly to using the outside button. Fantastic. And is very enthusiastic communicator in other ways too. Love to hear it. Peyton, welcome to you. And your 16-month-old American Pit Bull Terrier, Uno. Oh, Street pup rescue. I love it. My very first dog was a street rescue, and I wish that I had buttons when she was with me, or when she was in her youth. Yeah, that's they're so smart when they learn that way. Their problem solving ability on average, I'd say, when they've been out and about like that. What's interesting and what you all will find as we progress and as we discuss here are brand new learners, are like young kittens, puppies, whatever species. They can pick up the mechanism of pressing a button fairly quickly, but you don't always have the existing vocabulary to go along with it. Whereas some of our older learners, they may have really well established modes of communication already. So that might be their, their initial reaction is like, well, but I scratch the back door to let you know that I want to go out, or I whine by the shoes when I want to walk, or whatever it may be. So convincing them to use the buttons might take a little bit longer at first, but once they get it, you've got such an existing repertoire of behaviors and vocabulary that it translates beautifully, but they all are going to pick it up at different rates. And again, we'll discuss more about all this. I'm very passionate about buttons, and I'm excited to work with you all today. All right. Manuela, welcome to you and your two cats, and Donna and Rose, or Jonah and Rose. They are almost 6 years old, just starting. Awesome. Okay. And learners are all going to pick it up at different rates, even within litter mates, even within the same household. But that's great. Go at the speed of your fastest learner, and they can learn from each other as well. And Michelle, welcome to you. And Tulip, 7 years old. Okay, she's spamming the buttons, but hasn't figured out what they mean. And she's a pit bull border collie mix. So yes, lots and lots of energy. Whew, that terrier uh, and herder combo. Never a dull moment in your household, I'm sure. Toto, welcome to you and your 5-year-old Havanese, or yeah, and Deborah, welcome. And Gypsy as well, 15-year-old terrier. No plans to include the 15-year-old cat, but hey, you never know. I did not think that my blind cat would take to the buttons as well as she did, and she had leukemia, so she wasn't expected to live very much longer, and we wound up getting, a couple years out of button use with her, and I would not have traded that time with her for anything. It really was amazing that she opted in. And Nancy, welcome back. You and Cashew, your Calico. I think welcome back, or maybe I'm mixing you up with someone else. Apologies. Barbara, welcome to you and Max. Okay, and more details here. Clicker, target training. I think he'll take well to the buttons. And welcome from Argentina. 2 years old, recently adopted. Awesome. Hi, Bernie. And so my other little boy is popping in to say hello here. Hi, Bernie. So if you notice, he is a button flopper. He loves to press his name for attention, hence pressing the Bernie button there. Hi, Bernie. What does Bernie want? Does Bernie just want attention? And there's nothing wrong with using the buttons for connection, for attention. Oh, but Bernie wants to play. I suspected that that might have been. Do you want play? Yeah, play. And so whenever they're hanging near the board, taking that opportunity to just narrate what they're doing, to try to model, if you have a button that does correspond, you're a good boy. And they're allowed to press however they're comfortable pressing. In Bernie's case, he's a flopper, a shoulder presser. As long as he's not frustrated and I can understand him, I think that's great. Sometimes they'll flop all over too many buttons, and then we'll work on, target training to slow them down a little bit. But oh, and Nancy asked a really interesting question here already. What is a good word to refer to the buttons? Buttons use words, so like some kind of cue to ask them to perhaps interact with the buttons or to clarify. A lot of folks will use your words. Word as a button, because this gets pretty advanced, but sometimes working up to having a button that basically is asking for a new button on the board once they have enough down. So some people will have like a word button for that. I'm trying to think. I just say buttons or words a lot of times. Whereas I'm adding a new button, I'll refer to it as, different button. I don't have a new as a concept, but I have different as a concept. So I'll use that in conjunction with whatever is changing in their environment. Yeah, interesting question. And Sarah, welcome to you and Bluebell, Abby, and Lucy, little dog crew, Dachshunds and Chiweenie. So fun. All right, so a little bit more about us as a company, and there's a close-up of Bernie. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger were using buttons previously with their learners, FluentPet is the original button teaching system. So what does that mean? It means that the buttons are built specifically for animals, and our mission is to figure out how to best teach dogs, cats, and the other animals we share this planet with how to talk or an approximation of it. And we believe that pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. So that's where you all come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learners. And the more of us who are able to progress, the faster we can figure out just how far all this can go. And in case any of you are wondering, how far can this go? We think this video really helps paint a picture of what's possible, and you'll probably recognize Alexis and Bunny.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect.
Do you need to get outside?
I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw.
In your paw?
And then she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
He was able to request medication multiple times after having an eye procedure with eyes and help, or some combination of that. And it's not all medical related. There's lots of fun examples too. One of my favorite early ones was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who would repeatedly combine water and bone. Took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes. And so she got an ice cube button in order to ask for those in the future. So it really is amazing how creative they can be, even with a limited vocabulary. All right, so how do we get started? So you all saw me demoing with my cats, but modeling starts off with verbally narrating, talking to them all the time, trying to be specific with our language. You can keep a list if that's easier for you. If you've got multiple humans in your household, try to pay attention to what concepts you all name the same, because something as simple as taking them out to go to the bathroom might be something one of you calls potty, but the other person says hurry up. That could be confusing for your learner. So trying to pay attention to where there's consistency. And since modeling is how we teach them what these concepts mean and get them excited and motivated, early on, trying to pick buttons for which you can say yes to the press. We want to capture their excitement, their enthusiasm around the board for those who aren't hesitant, but take that curiosity and channel it while you've got it initially, and show them and teach them that this is an amazing tool that they're going to now have available to them. And it sounds like we've got a lot of multilingual folks here today, which is fantastic. Pick and choose whatever makes sense for you. It doesn't have to be all one language. Our learners are already multilingual. If you think about their first language is typically body language, but they also react to each other's vocalizations. They might know whatever our primary language is, but also whatever other languages are spoken around them. So as long as you are consistent in what you call something, it doesn't have to be, all the same language, just each individual concept. Call it, whatever is easiest for you. And you can more readily avoid homonyms, avoid words that sound similar to each other if you can pick and choose from different languages. Calvin likes to tell about how he ran into mad and dad being too close to each other sound wise for Jason. So switched it to go by Calvin, his first name, instead. Hi and goodbye in our house, so like rhyming things too. If they sound too similar, that can be confusing, but you've got an advantage of picking and choosing different languages that way. As long as you're, again, consistent in what you're labeling things. And then once you're ready to put the buttons down, on the board. We have 3 simple steps to modeling. First, press the button, something that's immediate that you can follow through on. And the more frequently you can follow through, the better. If you can model it 10 to 15 times a day, fantastic. That's going to lay a really strong foundational understanding of the buttons and allow you to build out and get to abstract concepts a little bit sooner. So press that button. Follow through is step 2. Show them the meaning of the word by making it happen. And then step 3 is repeat. It's a lot of repetition, especially early on. Lots and lots of reps. So what does that actually look like in practice? If you're home throughout the day or on weekends, whatever your schedule may be, and you're around, this is what it might look like. Here's Kelly and her learner, Delmer. This is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household. You're going to see a lot of repetition.
Puzzle. O-tag. 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 Puzzle. O-tag. Pet. Puzzle. O-tag. O-tag. Pet. Puzzle. Puzzle.
And look at that beautiful accidental press. Those are great learning opportunities.
O-tag. 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 Puzzle. O-tag. Puzzle. O-tag. O-tag. O-tag.
Again, a lot of repetition, especially early on. We're helping them understand that the button has a consistent outcome each and every time. And so know that Kelly was talking to him throughout and she's following through. It just would have been too long of a video. And take advantage of those accidental presses. They're great learning opportunities and a great way for your learner to realize that they can affect the outcome. It's not just for us to push the button and things happen. Sorry, I've got board pressing happening. And I have a note at the bottom of the screen that learners are all going to take different amounts of time before they press. I mentioned litter mates pick this up at a different rate from each other. And many households have been surprised at who winds up pressing first. So stay open, model for whoever wants to be nearby. If I press treat in a or eat in a multi-learner household, whoever shows up, they have the opportunity to eat. I'm not trying to create competition or resource guarding. I want the board to equal abundance. So if one presses, everyone is welcome to partake. They don't each have to press outside before the door opens, for example, right? That's just not realistic. Yeah, some of it just comes down to figuring out what motivates them. And again, the better they are at communicating other ways, sometimes it can slow down their button use. And that doesn't mean they're less intelligent, doesn't mean that you're doing a bad job. They're all different. So stick with it. And sometimes rapid modeling can be a good way to help out too, especially if you don't have time that you're around the board throughout the day. Some rapid modeling, pressing, and then following through immediately on the press can be really helpful. So rapid pairing and food buttons can be a great way to do this, but you can also utilize pets or play, whatever's easy to follow through on at the board. So here's Kelly with a different learner, Nushka. A snack button this time. And notice that Kelly's pressing snack with the treat to really drive home food. The button press equals food in this case. She's also tossing the food a little bit away so that Nushka is reorienting to Kelly, reorienting to the button, and realizing like, okay, this is what gets me more. And typically, if you take just 30, even just 60 seconds a day of this and do a few days of reps, it gets to the point where you stop and they're like, what's going on? How do I activate this? So I use a lot of modeling, whether it's all throughout the day, rapid modeling, both, to get them interested. And then once they're interested in trying to activate it, then I start working on the target training aspect, which we'll talk about a little bit later here today. So hopefully that's helpful to start thinking about here. So let's chat about choosing first buttons and words, then we'll talk about some of the great abstract questions that you all have. And Sarah asked, we've had buttons for a couple years and only one of my 3 dogs has ever showed interest and pressed them. Do some pets just never use them? Certainly, there are some, particularly seniors in my own household, who have since passed, but they never showed a particular interest in pressing themselves. But at least if one would press, they'd be like, "Oh, great, let's respond to that button," until their hearing went. Um, so it makes sense. I never pressured them, and I have a lot of learner presses to keep up with as it is. So if anything, I'm like, it's kind of nice to have one or two that are not always pressing. So I personally think, yeah, sometimes it's just not a preferred method of pressing, but more often than not, if there aren't cognitive decline or visual or auditory declines that are contributing, often it's that they just don't see the point yet. And maybe it's that they don't see the point because they're really effective communicators otherwise, and it might not feel worth it to you or them to learn a new skill or to teach this. But often it's just coming down to figuring out what's going to motivate them individually. And especially knowing that you've already had a board down, that's where I would do an additional board for one or both of your non pressers. Think about what really is going to fit the criteria for them as we go through this slide. Because our starting buttons ideally should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner, easy and convenient to model immediately, and concrete or actionable. Because the soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use, we want it to be an easy to digest, easy to understand concept that we're starting off with them. So for my kittens, I started with eat, pets, and play. For my border collie Adora, started with outside and in her case, ball, since ball is life. You can absolutely start off more generally, like a general outside, but you can start off more specifically with potty if that's more interesting to them. Um, general play versus the specific toy. If they're a big fan of a specific toy, you can always get general if you start specific and vice versa. You're not stuck in one or the other. We started again with the general eat for my cats. And as you heard at the beginning, we've got kibble, wet food. She didn't press it this time, but there's this pumpkin button even so that she can let me know when she wants that as a meal topper. So we want to be setting ourselves up for success, choosing things that are easy for us to say yes to, model immediately, follow through with. And the more you can model at the board and get those reps in at the board, the faster they tend to pick it up. So outside is on here as a common starting button, but it doesn't mean that it's the best starting button, and it might not make sense for you. So don't feel pressured to start with it. If you live on the 10th floor, it's not going to be easy and convenient for you to model outside, right? That's going to be a pain to gear them up, get them downstairs, get down the elevator, flights of stairs, whatever it is, right? So set yourself up for success. If you have a cat who isn't sure how they feel about outside, or it's a nasty time of year for the weather and you don't want to commit to going outside all the time, I wouldn't start with that button. Set yourself up for success. We want to start with 2 or 3 buttons, more than one, to help them understand that different buttons mean different things. If you only have one down so far, no problem. Go ahead and add another 1 or 2. That way they can start to learn to differentiate between different buttons and different outcomes. And Peyton asked, should I remove some buttons if I added all 6 already across 3 tiles? Mom, Uno, eat, outside, play, I love you. Maybe that's too many, too overwhelming. And it may be, it really depends on the learner. General best practice is the 2 to 3 as a sweet spot. That's what we found over thousands of households. But I will also tell you, Puppy Parker Posey, who's been featured on Netflix, Inside the Mind of a Dog. She's the one who is best known for her iconic squeaker car press in reference to the ambulance outside of her house. They started it with at least 6. They put down the whole kit, maybe even 8 or 12. They put down a lot of buttons at once. But Parker is hungry for knowledge, hungry for words, loves knowing what things are called, how to label things, categorizing things. So it really depends on your learner. If it seems like Uno is a bit overwhelmed, I would maybe pare it back a little bit. We definitely don't want to make a ton of adjustments all the time, right? We don't want to be adding way too many buttons at once, taking too many things away, rearranging things. We don't want to overwhelm them. But change is inevitable, especially when we think about the soundboard as a lifelong communication tool for them. Their needs, their wants, their interests, their abilities are going to change over the course of their life. So the change is inevitable. It's just up to you if you keep modeling what you already have down. Um, if you just put them down and put that many down, I would maybe scale back. In your case, mom, uno, and I love you. The reasons I would pick those is they're a little bit less actionable. At least if mom is pressed, you can get up and come over to the board. And mom was button number 4 for my kitten Katie, because she was pressing eat just to get my attention. So if they seem like they are connection seeking, attention seeking, having a way to do that with a name or even hi, yoo-hoo, hello, some kind of button like that can be really helpful. But Uno, like even when Bernie presses his name, sometimes it's attention, but sometimes it's a request. And how do you follow through? That can be a little bit more challenging. And I love you, if that's your pets button, if that's your affiliative, scratches, connection button, like physically in that way, then it is concrete and actionable, right? But if it's just the emotion of love and you're telling them, I love you, we're feeling that. Yes, there is a chemical release, but it's still kind of abstract. We're not necessarily able to take action with that button. And so that's why I would save that until you have independent presses with more concrete actionable buttons first. Hopefully that makes sense and is helpful for everybody to hear and kind of talk through. And said that today when I was in the bathroom, I left him in my room to eat and I got a notification on my phone that he pressed, I love you, mom. I know it was definitely an accident because we just started yesterday. Okay, that's helpful context for me. I'm sorry I missed that earlier, but it made me smile. That is awesome. Yeah, you're definitely not, I feel like there's no such thing as modeling too much. Model, especially when you're adding new things. But knowing that you already have an interested learner, and that they are trying to get attention or connection, it can be helpful to keep at least one of your names down as well. So maybe starting with 4 buttons instead. And Michelle asked, where do I put the buttons? I work remotely, so most of my day is spent in my office. Tulip is usually in the office with me. Do I keep the buttons in there? And Calvin said, great question. In the beginning, I find it helpful to have them close by if possible. It can make it easier to follow through, say yes to those presses, and agreed. And until you know where you want the soundboard to live, it's also okay to bring it with you. If you think about starting off, even for my tiny kittens, I had 3 hex tiles for them. I don't like to put more than 2 buttons per hex tile when I'm starting off, even for littles. So I would have at least 2. It's very portable when they're the smaller pieces like this, right? So you can pick it up and bring it with you wherever. Bring it to your office when you're in, if you're in the kitchen later, after you're done working, or napping or lounging on the couch in the living room, napping if you're me, let's be real. If I'm going to be lounging in an area for a while, I might pick up the whole board with a new learner, or I'll pop like the pets button out of the hex tile, bring it with me if we're going to be snuggled up on the couch. And then I can be modeling pets verbally and pressing that button. The first time I recorded a walk button, it's not one that we started with because I was not ready to commit to saying yes to each press for a walk, right? Especially 10 times a day. That was not feasible. So I waited to add a walk button. But when I did add it, once my learners knew how to hear no, that it wasn't going to shut them down, frustrate them too much, I recorded walk while we were on our walk, recorded the button, pressed walk multiple times. Then when we got home, added it to the board, home now, walk all done, and was able to model that, pressing it on the board with the brand new button. So anytime you can make it really relevant like that, I think it's great. And the more you can get them comfortable with carrying the soundboard around, the easier it is to take it on vacation as if that's something that you're interested in doing, or take it with you as you travel. I found that it's a lot easier to get my cats comfortable new places if I have the soundboard with them. Because even though there's everything else is novel, with the exception of I bring the comforter so that it smells like home and they can find the bed to snuggle on. Comforter because they just sleep on the bed with me. Otherwise, I'd bring another bed. But and then the soundboard, and they're like, okay, this is where we're going to sleep. We're good. And so often this all ties in, and we get the additional question of, well, how do they learn the soundboard? How do they differentiate between buttons, between locations, that sort of thing? Bernie's telling me to be all done because he wants to play more. Bernie, play. Come here. You ready? Ready. Bernie, go play. Get it. So when we're thinking about the soundboard location, again, just carry it with you at first until you know where you want it to live. And the reason that works is we can think about them learning the soundboard is similar to us learning how to type on a keyboard. At first, you need to be looking at each key, right? Going really slow, pressing each one. But with time, practice, and patience, you develop the skill set to go much faster. You don't need to be looking at the keyboard anymore. You can pick up your entire laptop and move it anywhere with you, right? And know that you can sit down and your keyboard is going to be the same. For those who have a QWERTY keyboard, if you notice, your F key and your J key also have little indentations on them, little notches. They're anchor keys to help you orient to your keyboard without looking. I try to do the same thing with the soundboard visually. So obviously when you're first starting off, just whatever. But remember, you can always move the buttons. You can always adjust the hex tile. For us, I've got different shapes of islands. Within every island of hex tiles, within every hex tile, the layout of the buttons is slightly different. I use color to create contrast. I use texture as well because I have low vision learners to create additional difference, contrast, that sort of thing. So just thinking about, this is kind of a pretty typical 3 hex tile straight across layout, but notice how I'm using where the buttons are within the hex tile. I'm even using the orientation of the hex tile. I'm changing the direction that the hex tile logo is facing in order to create a little bit different layouts and just as much visual distinction as possible and textural distinction as possible for my learners to help set them up for success. So it's totally up to you. Some people are like, well, I want all of the emotions to be on the red hex tile. I want all of the locations to be on the green hex tile. Totally up to you. If that's what you want to do, just know that as the soundboard builds and grows, they're also going to generalize things. They're going to use buttons in ways that you never expected. So try not to get too hung up on, I only want something on this location, this, that. And also know that I've seen fully blind learners use buttons just completely straight in a line with no differentiation and been successful. I've seen fully monochromatic boards. They can be successful. Just know that the more we set them up for success so that they're not frustrated, so they feel supported, I think the better. Peyton, I'm glad to hear that made sense. I said we have 3 buttons down currently, started this week, so Coda doesn't care at all yet. We chose play, outside, and loves or petting. That sounds great. I also made up treats and potty. Coda is highly motivated to play fetch outside, but do I press play and outside or just play? I want to add potty, but would Coda use potty or outside? Excellent question. So let's talk through this, and hopefully that will help as well for you all thinking about what buttons to start in your own homes if you haven't picked them already. So you're absolutely right that for fetch outside, you could use play and outside. I would probably press both. I'd press the play first and then the outside in order to get them, geared up. And that way, if you're just pressing play and not adding the outside, they're like, oh, okay, we're going to play inside. So you can start a little bit of that contrast. The typical rule that we say is whatever capacity they're pressing at, we model +1. So if they're pressing one button at a time, then we press two. So if they're not yet pressing, typically we just model one. But I think in your case, especially if Coda already knows verbally, play, and outside, I think you're okay to go ahead and verbally model and press both of those buttons before going out. Um, so the potty is interesting too. This is why I like to start generally, typically whenever possible, because with a general outside, you can have play out there, they can potty out there, they can walk, they can eat. There's a bunch of different activities that they can do. So you can model outside more easily with a lot of reps if you've got different things that you can do when you're out there. So I think that's really helpful for learning. So I would maybe stick with just the outside unless potty's really helpful for potty training or something that your learner is trying to articulate regularly and you think that going ahead and adding that button sooner rather than later. Technically, it is encompassed in the outside though, but I don't think there's a problem with them being able to tell you specifically what they want to do once they get outside. Does that help everybody with thinking about, maybe starting more generally and then being ready to go with the specifics? She said, my dog developed a set of signs to communicate with me. This actually causes problems using buttons. He does not get why he would need those. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's where we were talking about if they have those well-established modes of communication already, they might not see the point of the buttons. So as Calvin articulates brilliantly here, the trick is to try to find the gap, something that they want to express but don't yet have a clear way to. So that little bit of nuance or unmet need can be the key to making buttons feel worth it to them. So for my senior guy napping back here, Ash, he had no interest in pressing the buttons himself until he accidentally stepped on the puzzle button. I ran to the freezer and got him out a frozen Kong. And for anybody who is not familiar, hi, Bernie, you napping on the kibble button? Which I don't have a Kong ready to go, of course, but puzzle equals, it can be like frozen baby food container, it can be a licky mat, it can be a stuffed Kong, something like that. And you can see him getting excited now. Anytime that was pressed, that wasn't something that he had a way to communicate otherwise. He could ask for regular treats because he'll stare at what he wants and back at me. But he's like, what the heck? Yeah, I absolutely want a puzzle. Yes, you can have puzzle now. And so again, notice he's telling me with his body language that he wants a puzzle right now. So I'm going to tell him, yes, Ash, puzzle. Yes, Ash gets a puzzle. If I can find puzzle, there it is. Yes, Ash, puzzle now. Yeah. And so he doesn't have to press it. I can be translating it to the buttons or verbally, that sort of thing. Yeah, so find the gap, something that's really motivating, but that they don't have a way to articulate or a way to show you via body language. And that often becomes worthwhile for them to want to use the buttons. And what should we do if they press a button and it's not possible to say yes immediately? For example, if they ask for outside and it's pouring rain. Yeah, that's a really great question. So that's where part of why we're trying to say yes as much as possible is so that you're putting money in your relationship bank account. You're saying yes enough times that the times when you can't say yes, you're on an important work call, it's storming outside, it's too hot, whatever it may be, they're more readily able to accept the no because we've said yes so much. It's not as frustrating for them. And the other piece of this is working on abstract concepts. And we'll talk about the help concept in this as well, because I know that was a really great question that came through too a bit earlier. Oops. Apologies, y'all. One of my dog sitting charges is very upset at something outside. So I want to save everybody's ears and hopefully not set off any of your learners. Okay. Apologies again, y'all. All right. So when we're ready to teach abstract concepts, this is when your learner is pressing independently, and especially if they're pressing more often than you can say yes to, then you might be ready to add some abstract concepts, or when you just can't say yes to a press because we're only human and that's real life and that's okay. We're all just going to do our best. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of good with all of this. Dive in and have fun. Hi, Adora. The first thing that I want to emphasize before we add kind of session ending buttons like the all done, no, later, these kind of boundary buttons, the more things that you can say yes to easily on your board, the better. So anytime I'm kind of adding a demotivating button, something that is less exciting for them, I'm also trying to counteract it by adding something really exciting and worthwhile for them. And try to, again, set yourself up for success with things like a puzzle button that they can take, maybe 20 minutes to work through and finish eating. And that way you're not just, being a vending machine for every single kibble or eat, treat, press, whatever it may be. All right, and so notice these are also listed in pairs. The reason for that with our abstract concepts is the more you can model them in opposition to one another, the better. So you can contrast them to each other. So when we think about the more or the yes or the now, we can be saying things like, yes, more eat now as we're giving them more food. Yes, more outside now as we're going outside. We're taking action with the yes. We're in the present with the now, whatever it is that we're doing more, we're contributing something often or adding. So those are a lot easier to understand on average than the all done or the no or the later. So again, in contrast, they ask to go outside and we're like, no, outside all done, we'll go later. And then nothing happens. That's really hard for our learners to understand, right? At first. So adding them in pairs that you can model in opposition to each other, or trios, or even quads, depending on what the concept is and how advanced your learner gets. More and all done are a great early pair, or yes or no can be a great early pair, or now or later. Pay attention to how you talk to your learners, what concepts you're already narrating, what they're responding well to, and that can give you kind of a hint as to which one of these pairs to start with. Now, I will tell you, with my very easily frustrated and excitable border collie, using outside and then ball for her, I got her incredibly motivated to press, right? And that sounds like some of you all are in the same boat where your learner is like, yes, let me press all the buttons. This is great. That's a really great problem to have, that they're that enthusiastic. You've successfully taught them to want to use the board, but now we need to tone it down a little bit. So this is where thinking about some boundaries can be helpful with it. I started though with more and all done for Adora, and I realized that that was actually more frustrating to her, because as I had taught all done as a concept, the way I had taught it was the end of fun. It was the end of play. It was the end of a training session. So it wound up escalating her behavior. So that's why I try to emphasize, think about many other things you can say yes to. And in her case, she just wanted to talk about all the things all the time. So actually adding a settle button in her case was helpful, because then she could narrate when she needed to settle. I could press a button when she needed to chill out a little bit. She would get to the point where she would nap with her chin on the settle button so that she could press it as she was resting. So thinking kind of a little out of the box. Typically, we talk about adding buttons that your learner will want to, get things for them. What's in it for them? What do they want to talk about? But sometimes for our really, really excitable ones, kind of encouraging them with some calmer buttons. And in her case, food buttons wound up being way, way calmer than the activity buttons. And so that wound up being her more chill option. So be thinking about, all the different motivators for your learner, and what they're into and maybe choosing some things that are a little bit lower on the excitement level so they can, again, stay in that think and learn zone. All right, and then some other abstract concepts and other ways we can be thinking about these things. And again, you can always be narrating this even before you're ready to put them down on the board. So emotions, a positive emotion button like happy in contrast to a negative one like mad or sad or frustrated. Time can be now, soon, and later. It can be before. It can be yesterday versus today versus tomorrow. Really paying attention to when unique or distinct things are going to be happening in your learner's life, like a friend visiting, a family member, whoever, going somewhere distinct. If you can start telling them a day ahead of time or earlier in the day before that really distinct event occurs, that can help them understand these temporal concepts. And then names, lots of them like to talk about themselves to get attention, to connect with us. They like to use our names for attention. Whether you want to go by your first name or mom or dad, totally up to you. Just know that you're going to be talking in third person. So plan accordingly. And if your learner is already used to hearing you called mom or dad, if you've got kids at home, that might just be an easy shortcut. If you have adults that you live with and they're used to hearing you by your first name, that might be the easier choice, but it's personal preference. And then concepts like help. Help is one that I love to work on and to practice in a variety of ways. If a treat or a toy is stuck underneath of something and I can use my grabby primate hands to assist, I'm narrating help there. But I don't want them to only associate it with the environment and things outside of them. I also want them to understand that I can help them and their body. They're all going to pick that aspect up at different rates. They have different comfort level with that, but some low stakes way that I start to teach help in like a physical assistance way with them. If I see them really digging in, trying to get to an itch in their ear or on a spot that's hard to reach, I'll narrate mom help and I'll come over and I'll reach that spot for them, massage it, scratch it, whatever it is that they need, and just start really low stakes like that. And I've successfully gotten to the point where not only has, Jasper asked me to put eye meds in for her, but Adora got a stick stuck across the top of the roof of her mouth and she was able to, alert me and then get help, like stay stationary while I pulled that out. Ash, little guy, got his head stuck in a baby gate, started flailing as soon as I said, mom, help. I wasn't going to press buttons in that moment, right? That's not the time to be narrating. That's a time to take action. But as soon as I said, mom, help, settle now, he froze and allowed me to get to him and twist his head and neck and get out as opposed to injuring himself. I never would have thought that I could get through to them with a verbal like help in a moment of panic, in a moment of crisis like that. So stick with it. Start really, low stakes with just things getting stuck, underneath of things like that. And this is one that I don't try to intentionally do. I won't put something intentionally underneath, stick it somewhere, and then require that they ask for my help. I think they know, and that can be really frustrating for some of them. So just play the long game with this, narrate it whenever you can, and get creative. Think outside the box. Just double checking. Let's dive into additional resources, and then we'll talk about any more questions that come through. But first, before resources, target training. So we've got links here on some great videos for target training. The first one is with Alexis and Bunny. The next two are great for small learners, cats included. A quick shortcut from the Alexis and Bunny video. If your learner already knows how to give you a high five, if they already know how to do a nose touch or a shake paw, pop that button out of the hex tile, something that's easily reinforceable. Ask him to give you a high five, nose touch, whatever it is, and then follow through on what the button says. So in this case, it's a play button. So I'd pick up a toy and I'd engage with my learner in that way. So you can absolutely take the button out of the hex tile to help them out. Just know that as you move it back in, It's going to look different. It might take some extra steps for them to understand, oh, right, I can push it down here too. That's okay. The other thing that I want to reiterate is when in doubt, help them out. I don't want them frustrated. I don't want them flailing at the board, at the buttons, giving up, walking away, being like, that's a stupid human game. That's the last thing I want them to feel. So if you see them attempting to activate the button, or even just staring it down, napping near a button, that sort of thing, when in doubt, help them out. And especially if you can time it, or they're tapping at the button, nosing it, whatever it may be, if you can time it to push the button, not their body, but the button while they're attempting to activate, that can really just give them that tactile feedback, super, super relevant information that, oh, that's how I activate it. That's what it feels like. They can feel it move under their paw, the vibration of the speaker, see it light up if it's a connect button. So that can all be really, really helpful. And that was how I taught my blind cat, was basically capturing a press in that way. And her realizing, oh, that's all I have to do. I don't have to knock everything off the counter to let you know that I want my food refilled. That's so much easier to just push a button instead. So when in doubt, help them out. And Calvin added those links. Thank you so much. Oh, and Nancy, great question. How long do you interact after a press? For instance, with the play button, I usually play for about 10 minutes with Cashew. That's great. That's really impressive. It honestly depends on how much time I have, how much energy and focus I have. It's certainly not something that I want them to have to repeat themselves all the time. But sometimes I'll only do like a 2-minute play session, and or you saw, like, I'll shake it around until I get bored or distracted. And if they want more, they'll just press play again, or they'll press the more button. Yeah, Cashew is very lucky. That is a very fulfilled press there. All right. And yes, this is definitely being recorded. And I will show you where to find it right now. All right. So one of the best resources that we have for you all is community.fluent.pet, where you all are watching this now, for anybody who is not watching on another stream. Underneath of the welcome area is Start Button Teaching. Tons of in-depth information, step by step, if that is the type of learner you are. Let me move Adora so that I can navigate a little bit easier. Adora, come here, baby. All right, there we go. So tons of step-by-step information. We also have FAQs. There is more than 40 deep dives on lots of frequently asked questions. So at least part of your question may be answered there. And that way too, if you have a question in the middle of the night, you can always type it out. We've got folks who are happy to help all around the world, but it might already be at least partially answered there. Underneath of the button Bootcamp section, events. The first tab is for button Bootcamp. When you switch from upcoming to past at the top of the screen, that will show you previous recordings, including today's right here. You can find other ones. Oh my goodness. What did we hear? Hear loud sound. Thank you. Wow. Sorry, y'all. Oh, siren sound. Wow, that's so loud. Wow, loud siren sound. Thank you. Okay, sorry, y'all. So Bootcamp, the next tab down, mentorship calls. There is one this evening, or whatever it may be time zone wise for you. Once you RSVP, it should show in your time zone. The mentorship calls start with a quick presentation and then deep dive conversation about whatever you need help with. And you are always welcome to listen in. You don't have to, talk or be on camera if you don't want to be, but we'd love to have you. They're just great deep dives on different topics like cats, modeling, spamming, surviving that stage, multiple learners. That one's next Friday with me. Body language and communication, how to translate what you're seeing to the buttons, independent presses, and they're taught by guides who have had success with their learners as well. Resources, Learning Center, those paw targeting tutorials, soundboard planning tool, if you are the type that wants to plan. Lots and lots of info all through here. Got discussion with more details, chat as well if you've got any updates or struggles. The one other section I want to show you, though all of this is great, under discussion, show off your soundboard. There are as many soundboard options as there are households out there, and sometimes even more for those of us who have multiple soundboards for different learners. Part of why mine is in so many small island pieces is because I have all 4 sharing the same soundboard as opposed to individual ones. That's kind of our compromise. So I wanted to highlight, here's a cool plexiglass mount so that's a little bit more angled for ergonomic pressing. Here's that soundboard planning tool in action, another island style. And with this space-saving design here of Sasha's tucked into the corner, that can be, again, really great for your layout, but make sure that the way Sasha has, that there's enough room for your learner to still get behind the board and press. A lot of them like to watch us while we're pressing. That's why that centralized soundboard, somewhere that you hang out a lot, or just bringing it with you at first until they're more independent, can be helpful, because they like to know that we're watching them, that we're going to respond, that yeah, that's so important to them. So thinking about that aspect too. And you can we've got a yoga mat under ours. You can use hex tiles as walkways, nap zones, whatever your learner is interested in. All right. We also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. Nancy is asking about it right now. There is a 25% off coupon code with course 25 that we'll put in the chat here. So Michelle, for right now, the mentorship info is all free, everything, you're in the community. There, I believe, will be subscription offers later for people who want ongoing coaching. But for right now, yeah, all of the mentorship calls, all of the previous recordings as well, because you can find tons of great recordings there. Yeah, we want people to be successful. We want to just get this info out there. And then we do have, future subscription things that are being planned, and things like the Let's Get Them Pressing course that are paid. But yeah, it's not a requirement by any means. Here's some of the great info that's covered in the Let's Get Them Pressing. There's live coaching. It sounds like we need to come up with the dates and announce when the next one will be. The Let's Get Them Pressing course is taught by Diane of Neurodog Training and Alexis with Bunny. If anybody is realizing that you need more buttons or hex tiles or anything like that, we do have a 15% off coupon code that's good for the next 24 hours that I went ahead and added. And then if you have any feedback for us, always looking to improve. Oh, awesome. And Calvin just confirmed that we should have the dates for the next Let's Get Them Pressing. Hopefully it should be up next week. Yeah, so then we can get y'all signed up, anybody who's interested. All right. And let me know if you have any additional questions that have come up. I think I've been keeping up as we've gone through, but let me know if I missed anything. I will not be offended. Please let me know. I'm here to help. Yeah, and I'll paste the coupon code again for you. And Nancy asked, the treat button is kind of sticky when I push, I think from putting treats on it. Is there any way to make it easier to press? Sometimes I will clean it a little bit just with warm water and a microfiber cloth. I've had good luck with it not being too wet. And because I've seen evidence of my learners utilizing scent to differentiate between buttons, and I do try to put some natural scents on buttons, like the mom button living in my pocket before going on the board, that sort of thing. I do try to stick with just like nothing too harsh, and more so use a little bit of muscle to help clean. So maybe giving it a wipe down and see if that helps. Sometimes they can get a little, just not be put together as well and get stuck, that would be covered under warranty if it is a mechanical issue with one of your buttons. So just reach out to info@FluentPet, and they're always happy to help with that. Okay, yeah, it's when you press down the downward movement. That's where, depending on the type, if you really wanted to, sometimes you can unscrew and take everything apart and see if there's gunk in there. But I may just reach out to FluentPet, and they should hopefully be able to help you out there. Yeah, Peyton, absolutely. I totally get it. Yeah, and one other thing that I want to emphasize with our eager but easily frustrated learners, I learned the hard way with Adora that she needs to be the one initiating with the buttons. I can hang near the board, I can ask her what she wants, but if I tell her to press, uh, and that's not something I've done for a while, but early on, I was just so excited because we've got this new soundboard tool. She's clearly excited to use it. All right, we're about to go outside. Hit that outside button. And she was so over the top that again wasn't a good think and learn zone. And we got a lot of rehearsal in of her just being like, I'm gonna hit the button. So instead, letting her approach on her own, having some calmer things there, asking maybe for clarification, but not expecting a press, thinking about the soundboard as an opportunity to connect as opposed to an expectation. And again, that can even be a very positive expectation on our part. We're just excited about it. But trying to keep as much pressure off as possible for those really excitable learners, especially, or sensitive learners too, so that they don't rehearse that kind of flailing behavior, and they get to practice being more intentional from an early stage, because we were slowed down a little bit by our enthusiasm in retrospect. Yeah, oh, Nancy, I'm so glad. Yeah, and so I meant to say this, but for anybody still here, you're also absolutely welcome to attend another boot camp. It sounds like Nancy got a lot out of attending again. It's always a different group. Uh, I've got my general presentation that we go through, of course, but again, it's tailored to you all, what you need, what questions you're asking. So, yeah, Michelle, Tulip is not the only one, not at all. Yeah, so paradoxically, taking a little bit of the pressure off and maybe even standing a bit further away from the board and adding some kind of calmer buttons for the ones who are already that excited about the board or about life. But I did find that even some of it could be just me like telling her to use the board, right? That was part of what was causing some of the flailing. But if I was standing too close, hovering over, I was thinking I was being helpful, encouraging, and pointing it out. But really, she was just like, you're in my bubble. I'm escalating even more. This is, ah. So sometimes modeling and then moving a little bit away, giving them some space to interact. It all just depends on how sensitive they are to things like that. It can be social pressure that they're responding to. All right, y'all. I'll hang another minute in case any more questions come through, but I know we're over. Thank you so much for being here today. Calvin, thank you for hanging out, especially extra. I so appreciate you and appreciate all of you, your great questions. Nancy, for coming back. That makes me feel good that you want to hear me teach about buttons again. Oh, Michelle, that's very good observation on your part. And this is also why I'm a fan of setting up cameras. Even if you're not posting to social media, I've been terrible about posting updates on all their presses and activity and all, but I get a lot of great info about how they're using the board, where, why, is there any resource guarding? Do they not like a certain section? Are they too crowded in a certain section? All based on kind of camera observation. So, all right, y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. I hope to see you either at a future boot camp or a future mentorship call. Thanks so much again, y'all. Bye. More? Okay, let's go play more. Bye, y'all.